Hi, I'm Dina Churchill, innovator of women's health and wellness, here to discuss episode 5 of the Truth About Cancer series. Please register. I've provided the links above, but this is a powerful series. If you've missed it, this is our 5th episode. If you've missed any episodes, you still have an opportunity to purchase, or you can watch the episodes free for the first 24 hours. So you can take advantage of that, have a little taste, see if you like it, but then you can purchase so you can share it. Because once you see this information, you'll want to share it with your family. So again, have a look at the link and register above. I just want to say I'm not getting any kickbacks or feedback, or I don't even know the people that are doing this Truth About Cancer series. Ty Bollinger has 5 of his family members die of cancer, and that is his fuel, to keep going and to giving you this information. I think we're just a group of people wanting to take the power back to the people. Because once you begin seeing the grave injustices in the world of health, you'll want to help too. So this program and this internet way of communicating is a way that we can unite forces and take that power back to you. You can help first by empowering yourself with knowledge. Be informed, stay healthy, and then share the information with others to do the same. So again, take a look at the link. The first episode, we discussed the medical monopoly and the whole money-making business of cancer. Episode 2, we looked at earth healing, and essential oils and plants that help stimulate the body's healing that you may not have already heard about, but is another option, sometimes safer than the chemotherapy ones that you've been told. Episode 3, we looked at the power of juicing and then the severe problems with genetically modified foods. Episode 4, we looked at the 2 foods or chemicals that fuel cancer, and that'd be glutamate. It comes in all sorts of different names. Go back, and on each segment, the videos I've done, I've also posted some literature underneath and pictures that I think you'll find helpful. But glucose and glutamine, and then I've given in the last video some safer options, ways that you can still have your sugar sweet taste without having the cancer-causing side effects. This episode, episode 5, has been particularly emotional for me as it combines 2 topics that are very near and dear to my heart. The first is chiropractic. But I'd like to put in a disclaimer at this point that today I've taken off my clinic jacket and my doctor title, and the information I'm going to present to you today is just Dina, the undiluted form. So I am in no way representative of any chiropractic association. I'm in no way representing the Truth About Cancer series. I'm just me. So chiropractic, 100-year-old profession, 125 years old, and it deals with a hands-on healing where we're aligning spinal bones. As a chiropractor, 20 years in practice, I've had lots of experience with that, and I'm more inspired by the profession after 20 years than I was when I initially started. But aligning the spine optimizes nervous system function. So our brain and our spinal cord, our central nervous system, is encased in bones that protect them. But if there's a misalignment, an asymmetry, or what we call a subluxation, it affects nerve function. Now, why is that important? Well, our nervous system is our master control system for all the cells and tissues in our body. In fact, at birth, 7 hours after conception, when the sperm meets the egg and they do that dance of division, it's the neural streak, it's called at that point, but it's the nervous system that controls the growth and differentiation of all the other tissues. So the nervous system is a foundational piece of health. What we find is in studies, and you can look up Heidi Havoc, she's a great researcher, the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, ICPA 4, the number 4 kids, also hosts a lot of information. But what we're seeing, again, as the nervous system controls the immune system, and the immune system we've showed in previous episodes really is the reason why we have cancer manifesting, because our immune system usually keeps cancer cells in check. We have kind of like a self-cleaning, self-healing body that sends out messengers to kill cancer cells in a process called apoptosis, which is natural cell death. And we can usually keep that in check if our immune system's healthy. So we need a healthy immune system to have a healthy body. Now, with the nervous system, not only does it enhance immune system function, it enhances all the other systems. So studies show that after a person's been adjusted, they're more neurally efficient. And oxygen on CAT scans, they can show brains that have increased oxygen perfusion after you've been adjusted. Our spatial task and our spatial awareness, again, other studies have shown when they put electrodes on people's brains that after an adjustment they can do a more complicated spatial task using less surface area of the brain. So it affects our IQ and efficiency. Moving our joints, being able to move your joints in all sorts of different ways. If your head is stuck over to the side, you won't be able to move. Your brain won't grow because brain growth is dependent on input from our joints. So someone like Stephen Hawking, for example, hires people to come move his joints, to keep his brain moving. So chiropractic is important because it keeps your joints moving, which is why in our society today, when we're sitting so much, it's really playing havoc, not only with our joints, but also with this cerebral spinal fluid, that's circulating fluid that bathes our nervous system and keeps us healthy. Jim McMahon, who's a football player who was injured, you can Google him. I've just recently heard about this story, but after he was adjusted, he said he felt like there was a flushing happening in his brain. So he had CAT scans that showed plaquing on his brain, and after his adjustment and a series of chiropractic care, the plaques started to reduce from a CAT scan, because it was impacting the cerebral spinal fluid that again bathes and takes away the byproducts of brain metabolism. So it's important for thinking, for detoxifying your tissues, balancing the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight. So if you've been told you have cancer, you're going to go into a stress response. Our parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest and heal and recover system. So we need to balance those two systems, having enough energy to do your daily work, but at night being able to settle your body so your body can heal itself. And it also affects the heart rate variability, which is something that allows our heart rate to go up and down to adapt quickly to our environment. So again, I love chiropractic. It's my heart and life. And I think not just if you have cancer, but if you want to maintain health and vitality in your lifestyle, have chiropractic. There's a pamphlet that we have in our office by 10 Olympic gold medalists saying if it wasn't for chiropractic, I wouldn't be at the top of my game. So not only in the common man, but in high caliber athletes and racehorses also love chiropractic because it improves their performance. In this episode, Truth About Cancer series, episode 5, there was a sacrilegious dentist talking about the dangers of fluoride. So the Lancet, which is a prominent British medical journal, labeled fluoride recently as a neurotoxin. So not only does it create cancers like osteosarcoma in the bone and thyroid and liver cancer, but it has more subtle effects on the pineal gland. So again, 1977, Dean Bank is someone you can look up. He gave fluoridated water to rats and seen all these tumors present. But the research, didn't get out there to the public, which is the problem that we're going to solve with these type of series. But the more subtle effects on hormone disruption, because the pineal gland affects hormone disruption and all the cancers that go with that, the breast, thyroid, prostate, and bone loss, which we know, osteoporosis is rampant in our society today. But even a more subtle effect on the calcification of the pineal gland is our inability then to connect on a cosmic conscious level, expanding our conscious awareness. So a fluoridated population is very easy to manipulate and to brainwash. Now, if you have fluoride, if you've been taking fluoride in your toothpaste, at the dentist, swishing it, or you're drinking it in your water, you absolutely need an important water filter. I keep talking about this. If you need more information, connect with me. Not just something's going to pull out the fluoride, but the heavy metal chemicals like the glyphosate that's been sprayed over our forests and present in a lot of our vaccines and medications. But if you have it in your soft tissue, just by avoiding it for 3 to 6 months, you can actually detoxify. But if it's in your bone, it's a bit of a different problem. So you need to detoxify. And this episode suggests different ways. Exercise helps sweat it out. There's Ayurvedic medicine like tamarind that helps. Magnesium and boron in a supplement, really important. Iodine. Iodine is so important for cancer. Apparently 96% of us are iodine deficient. So I'm heading out to the health food store today to buy iodine as a supplement. Really important, and study after study it shows. In the last episode you'll see the importance of that as well. And the last thing is a liver cleanse. So sweating, Ayurvedic medicine, the magnesium, boron, the iodine. When you take iodine though, you also need calcium because it can pull some calcium out. So if there's any of my patients from the clinic watching, our bone supplement, the Adiva supplement, it has magnesium, calcium, and boron in it. So that'll be okay. But we still need to get iodine. And the liver cleanse. I'm not going to go into detail about this now, but I think coffee enemas are one of the best way to cleanse your liver, and I'll do a whole segment on that. I'll show you my enema bag, give you tips on how I do it, and it's easy, it's quick, it's available, it's cheap, and it's healthy. So we'll do a whole segment on coffee enemas. Emotional balancing was another important part of this segment 5. That looked at, the body is a manifestation of what's happening in the mind. I mentioned a researcher, Candace Perth, who's wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. She's someone that you might want to research. And she was nominated for a Nobel Prize in the 70s for her work on opiate receptors. But she says when we have an emotion, certain chemicals are released from our brain that then can get deposited in our tissues. Chris Carr, who's written a book called Sexy Crazy Cancer Survivor, calls it issues in your tissues. But how our emotional state, both now and in the past, and also fears of the future, can get manifested in our cells. So emotional balancing is really important for someone who has cancer. And there's many authors like Louise Hay and John DeMartini that talk about the manifestation of cancer in a certain area can also be correlated to certain emotions and certain parts of your life. So it's kind of a body mapping that I'm really interested in and that I do with my coaching clients. But my very favorite, so they talk about emotional freedom technique, balance tapping on acupuncture points and repeating a phrase to yourself, biofeedback. Something I've learned about recently is EMDR. So this is eye movement desensitization. So you talk to a person about their emotions and watch their eyes at certain times. And it's a whole complicated psychological system, as there's some psychologists here in Halifax that are doing that. If you're interested, connect with me. Logosynthesis, which was something I studied with William Lammers, who I thought was brilliant. But my most favorite way of balancing emotionally is the DeMartini method. And John DeMartini has been doing this work for 30 years. It's only now that neuroscience has really started to study it and understanding how important it is to balance the vectors. So if you're holding an emotion about something or a memory, you have to have the opposite emotion and memory to balance it. They cancel each other out, and then you sit in a place of balance and poise and love, and you're not a lopsided perception, which is places and states where cancer develops. So if you aren't aware of this memory, anti-memory, you can look it up, just Google neuroscience, memory, anti-memory, and it'll give you the science. But Dr. John DeMartini has already developed, for 30 years, has been perfecting this beautiful method, and it's efficient, it's quick, it's a way to dissolve emotions. And I'm certain that it will be a Nobel Prize. I just hope he lives long enough to be able to receive it. So if you're not sure about this, or you haven't heard about it before, John DeMartini, martini like the drink with a D-E in front of it, Google him. Now, this last part I will probably have some emotion around it, but let me start by a quote from Mark Twain. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. So Mark Twain says it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. This next segment, I'm going to explain to you how you've been fooled. But I should put a warning in there that this segment may contain coarse language and violent scenes that might be not suitable for a general audience. Please, be advised to use your own discretion whether to continue watching. There's a whole series, The Truth About Vaccines, just like this series is The Truth About Cancer. There's a whole series. So there's so much information out there. I can't possibly cover it all in this short video that I'm just wanting as an introduction. But if you're interested in anything that I'm saying or you want to pursue it further, The Truth About vaccines.com, you'll find more information. And there's also another series, documentary series that I've watched recently and purchased, both, but it's the Vaccines Revealed, vaccines with an S, revealed.com. I'll post the links at the end of this one so you can have other resources. I also did an article on a blog where I cross-reference material. So I'd seen this material and I couldn't really believe what I was hearing and seeing. So I had to research it further. So I didn't take one source. I cross-referenced it with different sources, and the article I wrote combined a lot of different resources that I could find. And I'll also share that link with you as well. But we've been fooled because there's no data to support vaccine safety. Now, there is a growing database to show the concerns in our population, our health concerns, but I'm not sure, that I can convince you of that, because we've been held in a handful of fear, captive, thinking that vaccines were a part of public health. It's not. My best advice to you is really to suggest that to highly recommend, strongly suggest, urge you to investigate this for yourself. Don't believe a word I'm saying. Investigate it for yourself. It's important for your health and the health of your family. Now, this is what I needed really to shake myself clear of the fear of the pharmaceutical model. The fear that we would die if we didn't have vaccines. So when I was having my children vaccinated 15, 20 years ago, when I was considering it, I went to my family physician and I said, look, this is the stack of information that I've gathered that says vaccines are not safe and effective. It tells me in this research that the diseases were on a natural decline before they even invented the vaccines. And, there was a lot of other environmental things at this time, like DDT, that could have been interfering with the data. So if I feel they're not effective and they're not safe, why would I vaccinate? Maybe you can give me some of your information, medically. Studies, books that I can read. So my physician at the time passed me a pamphlet from Public Health and said, this is what I have. And I said, well, that's not going to be enough, right? Compared to what I've read, that little pamphlet is not going to do it for me. So I said, maybe you can read. So I pushed all the information that I'd studied across the desk. I said, if you can read some of this and tear it apart, tell me what's not true, because I want to make the best decision for my children. And she pushed it across my desk, across her desk, and she said, Dina, if I read this and admit that vaccines are not safe, then I'm admitting what I'm doing for a living, what I'm injecting into children every day is actually doing harm. And I'm not ready to go there. I really thank her, I won't say her name, but I thank her for saying that. Because she didn't say, what you're doing is wrong, or what you're doing is not safe for your children, because I was researching it. I want the best for my children. What she said was, we have to agree to disagree because that's not in my value system. So thank you for that, because it put me on a path of continuing to research and to share with what I've learned, which is what I'm doing with you now. So the Cochrane database is a database well respected in medical circles. Look into that. It says there's no evidence of vaccine safety. Robert Kennedy Jr., who's been recently appointed to the Vaccine Committee of Safety in the United States, has voiced tremendous concern. He's an environmental lawyer that got kind of pulled into the vaccine industry because of his work on mercury. He's very concerned about vaccines. He says if you drop a vial of flu vaccine on the floor in the medical doctor's office, you will have to call in the hazmat team, the biochemical team, to clean up the spill, because the amount of mercury in that vaccine is 250 times more than what the environment allows. So the environmental people, Environmental Protection Agency, is concerned about that amount of mercury, but we're injecting it into pregnant ladies and to children, untested. Now, why isn't there not more medical doctors speaking out against this? Because they will have their license taken away if they speak out against vaccines. So herein lies another problem in the paradigm. So Robert Kennedy Jr., thank you for all your work, because he's living his uncle's legacy, really, of trying to make a difference in the world. And is making change. You know, him and Robert De Niro actually have joined forces. Robert De Niro's child was injured in vaccines, and they're now offering a $100,000 reward for anyone that can prove or suggest a study that shows vaccines safe. I've asked for safety studies too. Since September, I've been sending emails to our health minister locally here in Nova Scotia, Honorable Leo Glavine, to our federal health minister, Honorable Jane Philpott, and to our near and dear Prime Minister, who has 4 children of himself, as does Jane Philpott, and also Justin Trudeau's wife, and anybody else like the College of Physicians and Surgeons, CBC, CTV, anyone else that would listen to me. I've sent emails voicing my concerns and asking for vaccine safety studies that have so far not. So I'm thinking, if there was vaccine safety studies, wouldn't the health minister be able to provide that for me quickly? Like, it's been since September 2016, and now we're into May of 2017. If there's safety studies available, I just want to see them. You know, I've been asking for this for 20 years, and my medical doctor didn't know about it. I've gone a little higher to our College of Physicians and Surgeons, and they couldn't provide anything. So I've gone to our health minister, Leo Glavine, that's now deleted me from his Facebook page, and then I've gone to Jane Philpott, which is the federal health minister. I've gone to the Prime Minister of our country. I hand-delivered him a letter of my concerns. And why hasn't he replied? I'll get to that. So the UK paid out $90 million to cover the costs of children that were damaged in the swine flu. The H1N1 vaccine that was introduced in 2009. The CDC's own statistics show an increase in fetal deaths after the H1N1 vaccine was introduced by 4,000%. Studies show countries with the highest vaccine rates have the highest infant mortality. This is fact. H1N1. So, you know, why do we, as a society, line up like sheep, waiting at the community centers and at the pharmacy for our shot of H1N1, especially for pregnant mothers, when pregnant mothers weren't even allowed to take a Tylenol because they were afraid of, you know, that crossing that placental barrier and affecting the child. Now they concoct a vaccine like the H1N1 where there's no long-term research, and it's never been tested on pregnant mothers, and they're giving it to pregnant mothers, an increase of fetal deaths by 4,000%. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why can they do this? It's because we're drinking too much fluorinated water and we can't think for ourselves. If you would even question what is in that vaccine, there's mercury, there's aluminum, there's bits of animal parts that I'll describe to you later. There's nothing in that vaccine that's going to support the immune system of you or your child. Yes, there's a little bit of an virus in there that can stimulate an immune response only when it has heavy metals attached to it that's going to give you a spike in your antibodies. So it's what they call T2 immunity, right? They need to attach these heavy metals and these toxins in order to stimulate an immune response. So no, don't just accept it. Know the statistics and the research. The CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, that controls our health of our space, has purchased $4.6 billion worth of vaccines. So here we have an agency that's supposed to be non-biased, protecting our health, but has a vested monetary interest in vaccines because they have $4.6 billion sitting on the shelf. So despite researchers like Andrew Wakefield and Stephanie Snuff, so Andrew Wakefield in 1989 had published a study that showed a concern about the MMR vaccine, giving 3 vaccines at once, correlating it to autism. Dr. Andrew Wakefield lost his license because of that study that's now shown, 7 years later, to actually be true. Stephanie Snuff is a PhD scientific researcher, and she has said that if we continue with the glyphosate in our vaccines and in our genetically modified foods and in our environment, spraying it over herbicides, spraying it over our forests, that in the year 2025, half the baby boys born will be autistic. So she's just correlating with what's happened in the past and where we're going in the future. If everything stays the same and there's no change, if you make no changes, half the boys born in 2025 will be autistic. Now there's problems that lock up the paradigm. The first problem is a law that was passed in 1986 by Ronald Reagan that said it absolved vaccination companies of any liability or injury or death. And it also absolved anybody giving the vaccine. So if your child has a vaccine reaction, your medical doctor can't be held liable either under this, what they call blanket coverage. That's weird. Because Robert Kennedy is a lawyer, he said this doesn't show up anywhere else in not only in healthcare but in the world. Who is like not held accountable? Especially here we have public health. If you're responsible for public health, shouldn't you be accountable to public health? It makes no sense, right? Think about it. It makes no sense not to be held accountable. If you have a drug on the market and the drug is causing cancers, the drug will eventually be removed. So even pharmacare has that kind of, we have that kind of protection, supposedly. But in vaccines, a vaccine like H1N1 can increase fetal deaths by 4,000% and still be on the market? Makes no sense. But this is the problem, right, with our paradigm. That's why we're locked up in that. Second problem, money talks. So big pharmacare, big vaccination companies can own Ronald Reagan to pass that law. They can manipulate the data of the CDC because they've bought $4.6 billion worth of data. They can pay off politicians, which is why I think Justin Trudeau hasn't returned my call. If you have safety studies of vaccines work, why aren't you returning my call? Why not send them to me? I don't know, maybe he's fearful. Maybe he's held captive somehow. That's the only thing I can think of. Why wouldn't the health department send me the safety studies I'm asking for? Okay, so if you think I'm a little crazy, I am. I want you to have a look at my Facebook page. Scroll down, and I want you to look at a post I did yesterday by a little boy named Chase. And he is from Australia. And he was injured with the hepatitis B vaccine from the hospital. His mother spoke out in a documentary series in a movie called Vaxxed, the Vaxxed movie. That's another movie I'd suggest. And this movie, got a lot of public recognition. It was shown across Canada in movie theaters. And that little boy, his mother then decided to sue the hospital for injuries and damages. In this post, you will see a live video where the police have came to take that little boy from his parents and put him back in hospital. So he's at home, and he was on a natural foods diet. He was improving. He was smiling. He was starting to interact more with his parents. And the police came to his home and were taking him away. I'll let you look at the post and make your own assessment of that. Another example was a case in a previous documentary of The Truth About Cancer, where the parents were refusing chemotherapy. They wanted to do a natural approach for their child. When they did the research and seen the benefits of the risks and side effects of chemotherapy, may actually kill their child. So they chose a natural route. They thought, if, death is a risk, I'm going to take it with a natural therapy and trust in the body's ability to heal itself, and have him home with me instead of at the hospital. Well, these parents were taken to court, and a judge ruled that the oncologist in this case was the expert. That child again was taken from his home and put in custody under the state custody, and was held down and forced to have chemotherapy. Say, really, dear God, this is not just against our parental rights. This is an injustice of our human rights. Informed choice, informed consent. There's no risk to the population. Harvard studies have shown if you're not vaccinated, you're no risk to the population. If you refuse chemotherapy, you're no risk to the population. So who has the authority to dictate your health? The state of Illinois? Or the government of Australia? Problem 1, the 1986 law that absolves vaccination companies. Problem 2, money talks. They can be bought. Problem 3 is a difference in values. So money and power are more important than human life. Now, in this documentary series, it's interesting, I'm not going to go into it, but they talk about CEOs and board directors of these pharmaceutical companies and where they came from. Germany. And there's a whole list of historical events and facts that I think you'll find helpful. But for now, I'm just going to say that money and power seems to be more important than human life. And I'm going to go on to give you some examples of this too. First, I'd like to define terrorism. The use of violent acts to frighten people as a way to achieve a political goal is the definition of terrorism. The use of violent acts to frighten people as a way of trying to achieve a political goal. So Dr. Andrew Wakefield published that study in 1989, suggesting a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. And in 2010, he lost his medical license. He was disbarred from the, College of Physicians and Surgeons, publicly humiliated. And in a study, in a interview that I seen with vaccinesrevealed.com that really touched my heart, the interviewer asked him if, why he did that, why he went ahead and published the studies and all the pain that it caused him and his family, losing his livelihood, being humiliated. And he said, because my pain is nothing compared to the pain that these families suffer, that think they're doing something healthy for their children and they're following the advice of their medical doctor and they're being injured. Judy Mikovits, Dr. Judy Mikovits is another example. She was a CDC researcher that was studying the retroviruses that were found in vaccines. So taking bits of animal parts and growing these vaccines on animals, you get bits of DNA from other species in that vaccine. So not only does it have, mercury or thermosil, it has, aluminum, bits of animal parts, bits of viruses, Simian 40, Simian 40 virus. You can look that up. It was a monkey virus. It's well known. It was well researched. But bits of viruses. But she was finding that these viruses, these retroviruses, were actually affecting reverse transcriptase, which is an enzyme in your DNA synthesis. So that not only are the vaccines affecting you, they're changing your DNA so they can affect generations to come. Powerful. And the government knew about this, according to Judy Mikovits, who spoke out against it and wouldn't agree to be silenced. So what did the CDC do? Judy Mikovits, you can look her up too, Mikovitz. Or again, if you scroll down my page, you'll see the story. As she was a CDC researcher, first they fired her, but then she kept talking. They jailed her. They put her in jail so she wouldn't talk, to tell the public that the government is frauding you. The government knows that these vaccines are harmful, but they're doing it anyway. Well, I don't know why. Money can't, it can't all be about money. It can't all be about money. It has to be about, saving their face, maybe. Why wouldn't they tell you that these vaccines are harmful? I don't know. If somebody has the answer to that, can you share it with me? But the last thing that I'm going to share with you regarding this injustice is that last year there were 11 cancer doctors that were murdered in a 3-month period. The only commonality between these doctors were that they were studying an enzyme, Nagalase, Nagalse, in vaccines, and showing how this enzyme in vaccines was causing cancers. YourNewsWire.com, you can find more information on that, YourNewsWire.com. So your first reaction right now, for those watching, and thank you. Who do we have? Tammy, Claudette. Hi, Claudette. Sebastian, Harold Tremblay. Hi, Harold. Angela, thank you for being here and watching. Your first reaction might be like mine, fear and disbelief. But if you go beyond your fear and your tendency to dismiss, this painful truth, you'll find light. You'll find the answers. You'll be enlightened with this information. Rumi, poet Rumi, 13th century, he said the wound is the place where the light enters. The wound is the place where the light enters. So the reason why I'm doing this is to expose the wound. And we need you as part of our mission to take the power back to the people, not to the establishment, not to this money and power-hungry establishment that tries to rule. But we need you to get healthy. So you can take back your brain, start filtering your water, eating organic foods, avoiding the genetically modified foods, growing your own foods to avoid the brainwashing. And seeing through the illusion is the first step. Now that you've heard this information, don't believe it, prove it to yourself. I'm going to suggest some articles, I'll give you the resources. But the only way forward is forward. Step 2 really then, once you know the information, is to live it and to share it. Because love trumps fear. Thank you for watching. I would ask you to reach for the stars, envision and achieve your personal best, and most of all, enjoy the journey. This is Dr. Dina Churchill, signing out.